Hey, I'm Mike Beckrell, and today we're going to take a look at a couple measures of a Jody Fisher chord melody performance, and we're going to kind of hone in on how he uses tritone substitutions to add interest to his arrangement. Let's take a look. I've talked about a bunch of times how I studied with Bruce Foreman, but I also spent a good amount of time with Jody Fisher during my undergrad, and I got a ton of stuff out of him, and he was definitely a big influence on my playing. So this performance comes from Jody's record, Old Songs, New Licks, and it's the tune Here's That Rainy Day. Now, typically this tune is played in the key of G, but Jody does it in F here. So let's take a look at the melody with the chord progression without Jody's enhancements. So that's a really just vanilla version of what the first part of this melody is. You start F major 7, C, 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 we go to A flat 7, we go C, E flat, A flat, and we land on C, and that's the major 7th of our next chord, D flat major 7, and then we go down to G flat major 7 here. So that's typically what the melody does. Now let's take a look at what Jody does with this. So the first part he goes, so this first voicing he uses for the F is pretty cool because it's basically an F6-9 chord. And he's using open strings. So he hits C, open D string, open G string, back up to there. So after he plays this, he jumps up to A7. And so what is that A7 doing? Because we're going to A flat, right? And typically we can add the 5 chord of any chord before to create tension going to that chord. So in the case of A flat, the 5 chord would typically be E flat, right? Now I've covered tritone substitutions in a couple other videos, but I'm just going to give a brief refresher on it right now. So if you take a look at the E flat 7 chord, we have this tritone here, right? That's our 3rd and our 7th. So if we look at an A7 chord, E flat 7, A7, E flat 7, A7, they both share the same tritone, right? Because the tritone wants to resolve, you can substitute either one because they both have the same tension that wants to go to there. We can see that pulls both the same way, right? So because we can precede any chord by its 5, we could substitute that 5 for a dominant chord a half step above. And you'll see that Jody uses this a bunch throughout. So you have our F major. We jump up to A7 or A9. And this right here is a very typical Jody Fisher signature move where we're gonna, so right here I got my pinky on G, my second finger on B, and then my first finger on C sharp here. And my third finger would be here on the root. But because I want to go up from C sharp to D sharp, Jody flattens that finger out. And so that's a really good thing to kind of get used to because it allows you to move melodies around while you're holding a chord shape without sacrificing the sustain of the chord. It's definitely an awkward move to get used to, and it took me quite a while to get comfortable with it. Now, I can comfortably do it with my first, second, third finger, but my pinky, I can't figure out how to make it flat unless I actually physically touch it. But that doesn't really work. So we got A7 here, and then he goes down to A flat. So he's playing. Jody plays an A flat major 7 here. Typically, you would play at a dominant 7 here, but I do like the color that Jody chooses for the major here. Okay, now the next part, we go up to the melody of C. And typically we would play that with the D flat major chord here, because it's the major 7th. But what does Jody do? Before he gets the D flat major, a D7 sus, or a C over D. And then he plays the D flat. Same melody note. Into the signature Jody stuff. So kind of some of what we have so far. A7, A flat, D7 sus, D flat. Then we go down to our G flat major. And this G flat major voicing he's using, he has the 5th in the bass. So we have our second finger here on D flat on the 6th string, B flat with our first finger on the 4th string, F with our 3rd finger on the 3rd string, and then B flat again with our pinky here. So after this G flat chord, he jumps down to G minor 11. And then what he does here, this is one of my favorite moves to do, and I guess I must have got it from Jody, because I use it all the time in my comping and my arrangements. He keeps the voicing here. So my voicing is 2nd finger on the G, 3rd finger on the F on the 4th string, pinky on the B flat here on the 3rd string, and 1st finger on the C on the 2nd string. And then rather than go to C7, I would go to G flat 7, again, the tritone sub. But to do that, all I would do is take my 2nd and 3rd finger here, and just lower them down to the 2nd fret, and keep my pinky and 1st finger in the same spot. And that gives me a G flat 7 sharp 11. And in this case, it works really well because that C is the melody note here. And then he plays the melody. And then he goes up to B flat, which in the melody resolves down to A, which would get us to our F chord. But what Jody does there is, when he gets here, he jumps up to G flat 7. So we've got our 1st finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string, 3rd finger on the 6th fret of the 3rd string, 2nd finger on the 5th fret of the 2nd string, and then pinky on the B flat here on the 6th fret of the 1st string. And then he jumps down to F. So there's another usage of the tritone sub. And after that, we have another 2-5, which is the same exact motion that he did here. There's C minor 7, B7 sharp 11, or F7, which we resolve to our next chord, which is B flat. So he uses it a bunch in just the first couple measures of the tune. This is a really cool tool you can use in your arrangements. Any chord in a tune can be preceded by its 5 chord to create motion. And so you can tritone sub that 5 and just anticipate each chord by half steps. Now you can definitely do this too much. Use your ear to tell you when it's right and wrong to do. And it really helps if you can have a melody note that is in that tritone sub as well. That's what Jody does most of the time here. So this is a really simple concept. I hope you can get something out of it. It's a really great way to add interest and excitement to your arrangements. Thanks for checking out the lesson. Keep practicing. I'll see you next time.